everybody. Thank you for joining us again for our, what episode is this again, Erica? The eighth, the
The
seventh,
seventh,
seventh
el
episode,
siete.
siete, of Coffee with a Side of Healing. Um, Again, I know I already said thank you and welcome, but again, I can't express my gratitude enough for everybody joining us here and meeting us on this platform or being able to stream our videos from the comfort of your own home. I'm really grateful again to have the entire team here. We have a great discussion planned for everyone today. Um, but I'm gonna go ahead and start off the way we typically do. So my name is Jaime Gomez. I'm with Service Area 7 Administration, and I am one of the community health workers assigned to the administration team. And I am going to popcorn off to a random person that I usually don't popcorn to, and it is going to be randomly. Let me spin the wheel. Just kidding, there's no wheel. Um, Cindy, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, please?
Yes, thank you, Jaime. My name is Cindy. I'm Cindy Villaverde. I am one of the clinicians here at Rio Hondo Mental Health. I work with our CalWorks population and also with our outpatient mental health clients. Um, so I will go ahead and popcorn this to Matilde.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Cindy. My name is Matilde Gonzalez. I am first and foremost a mother of a 2-year-old. I'm a daughter, I'm a co-parent, a peer, and a community health worker for Service Area 7 Peer Resource Center. And I'm going to popcorn off to Brigida.
Thanks, Matilde. Um, Good afternoon, everyone. Great to be back. My name is Brigida Bridget Salinas. I work with Service Area 7 Administration as the Health Neighborhood Liaison, the Faith-Based Liaison, and the School-Based Mental Health Coordinator. And I'm going to popcorn it off to Miss Erika Corral.
Thank you, Bridget. Good afternoon or good morning if you're watching us on La Mañanita, having your cafecito. My name is Erica Corral, and I'm one of 3 co-chairs that we have with the great SALT 7 Service Area Leadership team. So I'm really happy to be here to have this discussion as we see more of the need to have it. So make sure you continue to press play and put up the volume because we're going to have a great conversation about this. And I am gonna popcorn our chief, Mr. Manuel Rosas.
Thank you, Erica. Hi, everyone. Again, welcome. My name is Manuel Rosas. I am the Service Area 7 Chief with the Department of Mental Health. Super excited to be talking about this topic of maternal mental health and to have our experts here, our subject matter experts here to give us some more information about some of the stuff that's going on regarding maternal mental health. So I will popcorn it over to Danitza.
Hi, thank you for that. Yes, I'm Danitza Cardenas. I'm a clinician here at Rio Hondo Mental Health. I am a mother of 3. I'm really excited about this topic. It really matters a lot to me. So thank you for having me here today.
Well, again, thank you all for being here, and definitely, I think it's going to be an exciting conversation. I'm going to probably find myself going all over the place, so please try to reel me in, right? Jaime, relax, right? I know you're excited, but relax. But really, either yourself, Danita, or Cindy, maybe you can explain to all of us what is this that, at least for us, we're hearing about when we refer to maternal mental health. Maybe you guys could both share a little bit of what that is for us.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. So maternal mental health can also be referred as perinatal mental health. And peri in Latin means around, and natal means birth. So what it refers to, maternal mental health refers to when a person gets pregnant, it covers mental health then, and then a year after postpartum. So that's the maternal mental health that covers that. And maternal, and it also could include some sort of disorders as well, whether it's postpartum depression, anxiety. It could also include psychosis, PTSD as well. Yeah, so it's not only is just postpartum depression, because I think that's what everybody, when someone talks about postpartum depression, they focus just on depression, but actually it's very broad and it covers a lot of other mood disorders and anxiety.
Yeah, Yeah. So the focus is specifically right around a mother's mental health during this stage, during pregnancy, during the postpartum, and usually this could follow right up until after even 1 year after the birth. So, yeah, like Denise mentioned, it's practically covering a lot of different disorders that many may not be aware. So it really focuses on that mother's mental health overall.
And I think it's really cool in terms of knowing that this type of help is out there or support. Me as a parent myself of a 2-year-old, when I first listened to both of you give the presentation, I had a lot of aha moments like, oh, that's okay, I get it, and for me personally, uh, as a man, I was like, "Oh, okay, I get it." Like I'm saying I had like a lot of aha moments, but it's interesting to me just to hear this conversation coming up more and more, and to hear that these services are available to our community members. I think it's really, really cool.
Yeah, can I be honest? This is something that is not talked about that much. I was just having a conversation with one of my girlfriends about this topic. Hey, I'm presenting on this, and she's like, "Oh, I suffer from this," and I was like, "What? 20 years of friendship, and it wasn't talked about before." So I want to have that open discussion, that conversation about what really goes on, right? It's not a simple path to motherhood or getting there. It's not that simple. So being honest, having that open conversation, so not only can we have it with our friends, but also with our loved ones, our partners, our parents, so that they could support us during this whole motherhood path. Yeah.
Yeah, oftentimes there's like the stigma, right? That there's like, that mothers shouldn't suffer, that, that we have to have it put together, right? And oftentimes there's this huge stigma around it that makes it really hard for mothers to even seek help or verbalize or even express their concerns openly. So yeah, I think this is definitely a subject that I'll be honest that even before I gave birth, like I don't think I really knew much about. And it's something that it really took for me to get educated and really, go through my own personal experience to really understand that, wow, how is this not really talked about? Yeah.
And I actually have a question for both Danitza and Cindy. What do you think are some of the barriers, in our communities that don't allow mothers to not to speak about, maternal mental health?
I think one of the stigmas or the myth out there that happens is that when a big case happens, right? When a mom murders their kids, for example, they say in the news, oh, she had postpartum depression, right? They don't say she had postpartum psychosis. So when someone who has postpartum depression or notice they have the symptoms, they're like, oh, I don't want to talk about it, or minimizes it with, I just have the baby blues, or not knowing the information, right? Because there's different degrees. So even acknowledging is hard. I think moms have this idea with social media being out there about how it's something that you're supposed to be perfect. You're supposed to naturally fall in love with your kid. And sometimes that doesn't happen. Or sometimes we don't even notice our hormones changing. So it's I think educating the public is very important.
I think piggybacking on what also Matilda was mentioning, I think also something that you are doing also is, putting a label to it, not a label in a way, but like naming it, because then you're able to bring awareness and have that discussion. I know for my end, like seeing like the way the culture is even around it, like, you're supposed to be a strong head and go through the whole process and get out of the hospital and be super glamour with makeup and be ready to go. And that doesn't happen sometimes. Maybe you don't want to see your in-laws. You don't want to see no one when you leave the hospital,
Yeah.
and being okay with it. But then obviously from a culture aspect too, it's like, se enojó, no nos quiere, doesn't want to see us or something
Yeah.
like that. So I'm curious
Yeah.
to see how in the community, how we're also bringing those, conversations and awareness, but also providing a lot of that psychoeducation and putting those names to it and saying like it is called like this and this is the way we can help and support you through the process, and also help the husband, because a lot of the times it's both of them, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And I think one of the biggest contributing factors to those barriers too is the fact that, just having access to care for a lot of these mothers, or even just being able to identify some of these conditions that a mother is experiencing during pregnancy. And sometimes it may just be that they feel, right, that this is normal, that this is just, maybe they just don't know how to go about it. But in reality, the barrier could consist of just not understanding that there are symptoms and there are disorders, that there are, cultural factors, and a lot of other contributing factors that could, just add to those barriers. And it just keeps going, I think, for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's
You,
interesting too that everyone in this space has somehow been impacted by maternal mental health. And I know in years prior, just having conversations with Jaime and Manny and how they've always been drawn to maternal mental health. And now that we bring it to light, how every single person in this space has somehow been impacted. So Manny was like ahead of the game. Jaime was ahead of the game by saying, like, hey, these are some needs in our community, in our service area. But now that we're shedding some light and highlighting some of these needs, some of these themes, it's great because as a community, right, we talk about en comunidad, we're able to rally together and really start to address and mitigate some of those, whether it's a social determinant of health impacting with implications to maternal mental health or even something greater. So it's so valuable to have these conversations.
I think so. As I shared before, because we've all kind of talked about this. Interestingly enough, for me, I heard about maternal mental health prior to joining the department. A different service area was working on a project, and luckily for me, I was very receptive. I heard all the information. Number one, my girl was about to give birth, so it really helped me be able to prep myself for whatever was about to happen.
Mhm.
And I think as I shared with all of you, it helped me realize that there's some things that I can't do anything about. I want to help, but the best thing I can do sometimes is stand back and even get out of the room. But as you all were talking, I remembered a very funny situation. At least it's funny to me, which was that my girl would get mad at me because I would take a shower, and and I didn't get it until way later when she was like, "At least you can take a shower. Like you've already taken a shower." And I'm like, "Oh, I get it." I'm like, "Okay, my bad. I'll try to be stinky for longer." But my point is that there's sometimes certain things with maternal mental health that expand or extend across a realm that, like me, for a man, that I can't understand. Even if I want to try to understand, right? There's certain things that we're just not going to be able to. So for myself as a man, just to be able to be supportive is a huge deal, and to be able to be supportive in the right way, right? Uh, I learned. I learned. Uh, Sometimes if a question is asked of me, I'm not really supposed to answer. They really just want me to listen and go, mm-hmm. And sometimes not even say, mm-hmm, just listen. And one of my favorite sayings, right, is I have two eyes, two ears, and one mouth for a reason. So just listen and try to be empathetic if I can, right? And I can't even say I understand what you're going through because I can't. But I think all those things come to mind when we're having this conversation for me as a man and as a father of a 2-year-old, realizing like what I was saying was that for me, it was very helpful. Number one, that I'm a mental health professional and that I was able to be receptive to this information when I heard it come about. Number two is that it helped me in my process and helping my lady go through what we went through, right? And understand that there might have been a little anxiety, depression after she had our daughter, and that, the best thing I can do is just kind of be there supportive. But now to see like the good work that you ladies are doing and some of our directly operated clinics, some of the groups that are being offered, I think it's super awesome because I'm over here talking about me and my growth, but the reality is that our community is going through this. And we need to have these services out there for our community, which kind of brings about one of the projects that Brigida and I have been working on uh, with Matilde and the rest of you, which is bringing like our microsite or our website's maternal mental health webpage up and kind of linking some of those resources, making the community aware that it's there for them to access, because this is something that, como diría, that's happening now, right? This is something that's real and it's really affecting everybody.
I think that's a great point. Maternal mental health, I kind of became more aware of it working many years ago with specialized foster care, and having some of the referrals that were being sent to us were these young mothers who were struggling with, like you were mentioning earlier, postpartum depression or postpartum psychosis. And in working with some of these moms, these young moms, there was a common theme always came about, which is the hesitation to seek out services, because it was almost like guilting the mom, like making it's like it's the mother's problem, because this whole how it's labeled, right, as maternal mental health. But I've always kind of viewed it as more as a systems. It's the entire family system, the entire support system. So I'm curious to hear from you folks that work with with this population about how do you address that, and two, does it always like maternal mental health, does it kick in only when you've been diagnosed with postpartum depression or postpartum psychosis, or is there some work that can be done to kind of be a little bit more proactive and preventative?
So one of the things that when I have a client and who has had sort of depression, you look at her background and she's currently pregnant, especially for those that have the diagnosis of bipolar, for example, then those are the ones that I'm going to educate, give them all the education as possible, what to the symptoms, and check on their symptoms, and also keep track of them postpartum as well. So with those clients, I tend to meet weekly. At least I try to meet weekly with them, so I could see where they're at, if there's any increase in symptoms, or if there's because a lot of moms choose, or people or women that are pregnant decide sometimes to get off medication. So those are the women I want to make sure I keep track on, and postpartum as well, and provide, and also include if they have their partner, I try to include them. Or some of them have a parent that is participating, so a grandparent. So I make sure to include them so they could actually notice the symptoms, because sometimes an individual might not even notice that they're going through the symptoms. So I always try to include someone that, with their permission, provide psychosocial education for them.
So yeah, I think too, like just like educating, I think is going to be key. I think just checking into support system, checking in to see, if there's any like significant stressors that are occurring during this time. I know you even just checking to see if they're even following up with their primary doctors, if they're having access to that care too, could help a lot. It could really help a lot at being able to identifying it in time. And, just kind of bringing it back a little bit too. I know both Manny, you mentioned, and also Jaime, just becoming informed, not becoming, but being informed of, maternal mental health, right? And it's true, it really does affect a lot of people. It really does affect even, I think the statistics shows, right, that it affects 1 in 7 women and 1 in 10 dads. And I think that just shows how much this does affect not just the mom, but it affects the support that, that or their significant partner, if they're, you know, having somebody who is experiencing some of these symptoms, since they're also adjusting to it.
Yeah. And if I can bring in my peer perspective into the matter, after I had my son, I had struggled with depression and anxiety for a very long time. So my doctor was already aware, and he was, looking for all the signs. But I always said, I'm feeling fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. When I had my son, I still kept saying, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. And it wasn't until a few months after when I started telling my partner, I'm not feeling like myself. I'm feeling strange. And my body was still adjusting to not having a baby inside of me. So I just thought, okay, well, maybe it's just I need a few more months, and I can, I'll go back to the way I was before. And, when that didn't happen, I remember scheduling an appointment with my OB, because my primary doctor was nowhere to be found. And I was just in tears. And I said, I need help. And he said he immediately got out his notepad and he prescribed me medication. And I said, yeah, but I really need help. Like, I need more help than this. So I reached out to an old therapist that I had, and she just had a baby during that time too. So she understood where I was coming from. So having that perspective from my therapist as a new mom herself really provided me with that incentive and that support that I needed. And at the same time, it strengthened my bond with my mom. We've had, you know, a complicated relationship, I'm not gonna lie. But after having my son and sharing with her all these different things that I felt and that I was going through, really changed our dynamic and our support system, both as now the two of us being mothers, but being women at the same time. And so, I mean, if we're, you know, like Erica mentioned, if we're able to bring out this information and this support in a very caring way to the community and tell them just because you're this does not mean that you're that. You're still a person and you're still the you that you are before, just plus just better because you know you have your son, your daughter, your child. And I think that's the perspective we need to keep in mind as we're offering all these services to our community.
Well, it's really powerful, and thank you for sharing that, because I do think that, you know, it's having that peer perspective, that lived experience. I mean, really makes it real for the rest of us as far as what it was like for you going through that. So I'm curious to ask you, Matilde, are there, now being in the position you're in now, years later, looking back at yourself in that situation, are there some things that you would have done differently, or you would have said differently to yourself back then that you think might have helped?
I think I would have been a stronger advocate for myself. I've always felt that, you know, before having my son, I was an advocate for myself. But after I had my son, I felt so vulnerable. I felt like I was in a position where I couldn't really reach out. And every time I reached out to lactation consultants, to my therapist, to my OB. I just kept getting referred to all these different services. And mind you, this was during a time when the pandemic was just starting because I had my son back in April 2020. So a lot of people were still trying to pivot and figure out how to continue providing maternal services to all these mothers that had children in the middle of a pandemic. So I think I would have been a better advocate for myself, but I'm also compassionate that I was in a vulnerable position and that at that moment I did what I could. And if I could go back, I would be a better advocate, but I wouldn't change a single thing because it led me to this moment and it's led me to the person that I am now.
That's amazing. That's awesome. That's awesome. So I think I'm curious to ask from all of our experts here, what are some of the type of services that we currently have available to support like maternal mental health issues that are going on in our service area?
Yeah, so in embracing a mission to provide support through resources and partnerships with a wide range of providers, we're really looking to centralize many of these great resources, bringing our specialists, our stakeholders, subject matter experts to the table, right, and centralizing it. So now, thanks to the great work from the admin team, particularly Jaime, woo. You know, we now have a microsite where we're able to highlight so many of our partnerships, like with the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health, DPH. They're great because they're highlighting the work that we're doing and vice versa. We have our great subject matter experts that we have here in this space. And some of the groups and support that they facilitate for moms and parents. Some of our other directly operated programs, like the Young Mothers and Babies Full Service Partnership Program. So the website really helps everyone, right? Because I know that this is something that we talk about constantly is we have a smartphone, it's right in our hand. We're able to go to the website that'll be linked below where we're able to see where is there a group, where is there a meeting. In addition to making sure that everything is accessible, and able to be readily located, we're also surveying our health neighborhoods, our clergy roundtables, and our other community-based organization, what Jaime and I call doing the rounds, to see, okay, what service is already being provided? Great, let's make it accessible. Let's highlight it via this platform. And also who's open to collaborating and even expanding. Our service area is quite large. And so the nice thing about this space right now, currently on Teams, is that we have people from everywhere in the service area meeting in this one safe space to talk about maternal mental health. But it's like, how can we do that? How can we continue to outreach and engage to continue to organize ourselves? This group right here, we have several individuals who are part of the maternal mental health work group. But as we also look into expanding, right, are we looking to expanding into a maternal mental health and carve it out of our health neighborhood, or looking to some of our clergy and faith-based organizations to provide maternal mental health related support groups? We really want to make sure that, you know, we start with our base, we have a solid foundation, we have everybody, we have peers, we have community-based organizations there at the table, not only steering the ship, right? These are the needs within our community, whether it's monolingual Spanish-speaking families or other needs that had been mentioned before, but we want to make sure that we continue to leverage and drive the ship in the direction where we're actually there to provide that support, whether it's in what Matilde had mentioned. She had mentioned, you know, she had her mother, Jaime is a partner, and so he was there, you know, but we want to make sure that in addition to having those natural supports, that we as a community are there to support those maternal mental health needs. So we have a whole system community that is readily available to support the person, whether they have somebody who's blood, right, or somebody who's an extension of that. So it's an exciting time. Jaime, anything else you want to add to that?
I I'll be honest with you. I think you said it all. If anything, it's just my appreciation, to be quite honest with you. Again, being a father myself, right, and taking my family into consideration and what we went through in our process, I really feel like this is a really good model, like a treatment team model. Not only do we have our experts, right? We have our peers or individuals with lived experience, contracted providers, directly operated. Like we really have a super intuitive team, and we're prepared. Like again, sorry to defer to Spanish, pero vinimos con las pilas bien puestas, right? We
Sí.
have our webpage, we have our resources. We're trying to really hit the ground running because we know that this is a real need. This isn't something I made up in one of my stories. This is a real need that's affecting all of us. Not just, you know, of course, it impacts our mothers more, but definitely it impacts the entire family unit. And I think that's something that needs to be driven home, right? That it impacts everybody. And if we can support everyone consistently throughout our service area, I think we're going to be in a lot better place. Even the way we're starting, you know, we're starting little by little, but we're definitely driving it home. Again, just with the great group that Nita and Cindy are running, the uh, mommies and babies group is, did I say that right? And I probably flubbed that up. That's my fault. But we have all these things already happening. I feel really good about it. If anything, that's all I have to add. Scan the QR code on the flyer. It'll take you to the website.
Well, I'm also curious from our expert panel here. If you had like a wish list of other resources that we could bring on board to support or enhance some of the work that's being done around maternal mental health, what would be some of those additional supports that we could try to recruit and reach out to bring and join us?
So one of the things with this group, right, and I do have to share that this group started because there was a need, right? And from my personal experience, I looked out there and I said, this was 3 years ago. I looked out there, who could provide me services at that point? Because I was going through postpartum depression myself. And the furthest located in Spa 7, and the one that was nearest to me was in Pomona. So that was a drive. I said, that is way too far. And if anything, afterwards, I was able to get some help. And I said to myself, I need to do this for myself and for those of my community. And that's how this group started. I asked Cindy, you want to start one? She's like, yeah, let's do this. There's a high need. She also noticed it. And I said, let's do this. So we've started our second cohort of our group. So each cohort is 10 weeks long, where we provide psychoeducation, support. We want to normalize some of the experiences, some of the symptoms that women are suffering through, right? Having that conversation with their partner, because that could be really difficult at times, having that open dialogue and letting their partner know, hey, I'm suffering from anxiety or I'm suffering from depression. And so we have that in our group. We help women have that open conversation and education. So if I could have a wish list, right, for this group, one, it would be advertisement. Let people know that we're out here, that we're here to help anybody, any mom suffering from anything. So that would be it. That would be one. And maybe funding for this group for provide simple things as diapers. If we could take some of their stressors away, right? Formula. I mean, that we're currently in a shortage of formula. If we could help them with that, diapers, or even finding them resource like, hey, there's childcare. And one of the things about childcare, it's really difficult to find appropriate childcare. So if we could help them with just like here's a referral, something like that, so that we could help. So from a broader end, it would be educating the community, and then educating for friends to talk about it with their other friends, compadres, comadres, have that open conversation, right? And then from our group, it would be just resources. Yeah.
Yeah, I second that for sure. I think spreading awareness is one of the main things. I know Denise and I even just in preparation for our group, we're thinking of like, what can we do? How can we engage them? We're thinking of every way where we try to outreach them before our group just to make sure, we do have a group too, right? So it's just, spreading that awareness. We always want that. So that would be definitely a wish I was second for sure. And those resources would be helpful for our clients too.
You all have mentioned some of the like symptoms that people experience when going through this. Can you maybe like describe a little bit? And it could be anyone from a clinical perspective, you folks as clinicians who are running these groups, or even Matilde as a peer, as someone who's gone through this. Like, what does some of that look like? So if somebody was to be watching this and was curious, what are some of these like symptoms that people experience, and what do they look like?
So practically, if you practically for a lot of these moms, one of the things that you will not hear, and we've mentioned this during our mental health months, is that you will not hear like, oh, I'm feeling depressed. So oftentimes you'll hear keywords like I'm feeling tired, I'm not feeling like myself. But as far as symptoms goes, for a mother that is experiencing like postpartum anxiety, they may experience like extreme worries, they may experience fears, often relating over the safety of their children, especially. So this is all related to, right after birth. They may have like panic attacks. They may have shortness of breath, some dizziness, some chest pains, and even just some physical symptoms. And one of the key terms is, that symptoms is, worrying often about their babies, worrying about if they're okay. For postpartum depression, though, it looks a little bit different in the sense that, and you can have a combination of both too, by the way, but because they could go hand in hand. But oftentimes for a mother, they may experience feelings of anger, sadness, irritability, may have lack of interest in the things they used to enjoy doing. And you may see them maybe not being able to sleep, or their appetite changes. And the sleep is not so much related to because the baby's not sleeping, or during this transitional phase. Is mainly when they're experiencing difficulty sleeping when when baby is sleeping too. So they may just have a difficulty because they're overthinking about situations. So that's a little bit what postpartum anxiety and postpartum depression may look like. There are other conditions I'm not sure if Danisa wants to maybe jump in. She's with the postpartum
So
OCD.
So there could be also OCD that happens. And so it could be like that mom that washes the bottles 10 times or passes the vacuum 10 times. And that's like, maybe there's a thought that goes behind it, fear of contamination, fear of the baby getting sick. So they might act out, there might be a behavior ritual behind it. There could also be that thought of this mom replaying a movie of dropping her baby on the floor, right? It could be that. Or could there be one of the cases that I saw was a mom was afraid of dropping her baby. So she could visualize this and she'll play it in her mind that she's dropping her baby and the baby just falls in her brain. And she describes everything. The brain would be, matter would be everywhere, right? So for a good 6 months, she didn't hold her baby at all. So at that point, we needed to do treatment with her. And she, after those 6 months, was able to feel comfortable holding her baby, along with medication as well. But that could be something that OCD, there might be a thought that goes with it and a behavior, a ritual behind it, usually is related to contamination, or it could be sexualized as well. There's also like that fear of driving. Sometimes I hear that having the baby on the back, this is a whole new experience, right? You're driving and now you have a baby that you need to protect on being on the back. Sometimes that mom will circle around the neighborhood twice before actually getting to her destination. So that would be OCD. And there is psychosis that could happen. It's really rare. It happens 1 out of 2 out of maybe 1,000 births. It's very uncommon. But however, if you happen to notice that a mom's having delusions, a mom's not sleeping anymore, she is kind of in the manic state of like has a lot of energy, not sleeping. Anybody needs proper sleep. Anybody. So this is the time where a mom would probably need to tell her, or her partner might actually even notice it beforehand. Like some thoughts might be like, my baby is the devil or it's a demon, right? So at that point, that's when this mom would need help right away. The intervention is needed at that point. So but very rarely does it happen.
Interestingly enough, sorry, Cindy,
No, no, you're
just real quick, as you're speaking again, when my little girl was born, I was afraid to pick her up because I was like, what if I drop her? I know I'm not the mom, but like, I think during one of your presentations, I asked if there was any studies or research that showed that fathers could also experience these symptoms or these phenomena, right? In terms, because I know that I was not for any given reason. I was just like, what if I drop her? Or like, even now, if my girl says, hey, we're gonna give Sammy a bath, I'm like, oh, gotta give her a bath. I'm like, what if she falls in the tub? But luckily she's okay, she's strong. But my point is that it's interesting to me, again, just listening to you speak and identifying with some of these things, even though I am not the mother. As a father, I wonder how many other fathers experience those same symptoms.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like 1 out of 10 fathers statistically will go through those symptoms of whether anxiety or depression. And it could also be based on PTSD. Giving birth is not sometimes that great, right? There's an experience behind it. There's tears that could happen. And seeing that could be traumatizing for the father as well as to the mom experiencing it. Yeah.
And I think it's important to note too that just because a mother is experiencing some of these symptoms, it does not automatically mean that they're experiencing, postpartum depression and anxiety and any of the other conditions. Because mothers, sometimes when can experience the baby blues, right? So, so they're very similar to some of the symptoms that were described right now. But except they don't last over, so technically if mother is experiencing some of the symptoms that we just covered, over 2 weeks, and definitely we want to make sure that they're getting connected, they're getting help. But much like motherhood, right? It's an adjustment period. So sometimes you may experience some of these symptoms, and so these are more like what people will call like the baby blues, right? But they don't last that long. They usually tend to decrease and fade away during that course of the period. So I think it's important to know that there is a difference between the baby blues and the other mental health conditions um, that we just covered. I do know, though, I think it's important to note this because I know that when you were mentioning Danita, right, with OCD and just having those intrusive thoughts, right? I remember, and for me, there was like a lot of sense of guilt. Um, and I think a lot came from like, you're the clinician, Cindy, you should not feel this way. You should know your techniques, right? But it wasn't like that. It was just, and it wasn't until somebody mentioned, right, that this is an actual condition or thoughts that do cross your mind that really kind of made me feel normal, if that makes sense. So just even being able to have awareness of some of these experiences really, gives an opportunity for somebody to really voice out. I know that helped me to say, hey, I am experiencing some of these things. I don't think I'm okay. So hopefully, um, this movement, right? I think that we're seeing is it's exciting. I know it's exciting to me for sure, just to see it happening for sure.
Yeah, and Cindy, I think as you were talking, one of the things that occurred to me is that, I've heard a lot from when I speak with community members, with our consumers, is that just, getting into mental health in general, just does that just means I got to take a bunch of medications, a bunch of pills, and there's that stigma behind that. But you were talking about just even just that support. So I'm curious if maybe you all can talk a little bit, just some of the ways that we do have these supports available that maybe does include medications, but not always, or does it always include the use of psychotropic medications?
Yeah.
So
So
one of the things,
uh-huh.
yeah, it
Okay.
doesn't have to include. A lot of our moms who are breastfeeding at
Mhm.
times feel I don't want to be on medication, and we 100% agree with them. We want to be supportive. We want to hear them out. And so for those women who decide not to go that route, then we have to make sure that we provide therapy weekly, that we ask them to attend support groups, whether it's ours or through another agency, that's perfectly fine. We want to have and providing education to their partner as well, because their partners are going to be there, going to be experiencing as well. So we want to educate them in that way. We also want to make sure that we have information available that they could call us as well when needed. Having that.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely just having that conversation with a doctor or getting them connected if they need like services with medication. Yeah, psychoeducation is definitely key. And even just reiterating to a mother, right, that what they're experiencing, just, kind of validating and hearing them out and being able to kind of let them know that this is actually, even with, depending, even with the severity of the symptoms, just letting mothers know that it does get better. Hopefully, with support, with the right tools, with the right, support system overall, and just reminding them that there is treatment, whether it be medication, whether it be therapy, whether it be support groups, and it could possibly be a temporary and a treatable, for sure, treatable condition with the right help, for sure.
And I'm so glad that part of like maternal mental health is obviously, having, the mother like embrace the process and owning that. Because I think the media, the community, the family, everyone makes it so glamour that you're just gonna have a baby shower and then you're gonna go to the hospital and it's gonna be great. Like even you look at novelas, you look at, oh, like nothing, right? So I think I'm glad that it's bringing this conversation where if you do feel not at 100%, that you could tell like your comadre, or you could tell your best friend of 20 years, because I know after you guys' presentation I talked to my best friend about it, and it's okay to talk about it. Like we just don't have to talk about we're going to go get nails or not, but you could talk about the process that is happening prior to it and afterwards. And I'm so glad, like like you mentioned, Bridget, there is a space that you could go and everything's there that you could get access, and being able to, like, if I don't feel like myself, there is support for me and for resources. But I love the way that maternal mental health is also looking to support the family unit, because um I think even looking for culture, like speaking from like our Alt 7, like you do have a lot of the Latinos, and you do have the grandma, the uncle, everybody wants to be there when they give birth, like everyone shows up. So I think being able to know that maybe when grandma gave birth, it was very much different than your nieta, and owning that process and knowing that it was very much different than now you are giving birth at a different place versus if you dealt with, a different process, but giving that space and giving that support and know that you could overcome it and being able to know that you gave life and your body, it takes time to be back to itself. And I think if we see it like that, it's like, this is vida, and like your body's going to go through the process to do that. So I'm really thankful that there is that support, and I'm really hoping that everyone who's watching the podcast can share it with their grandma, with their comadre, anyone that spark a conversation. If you need to play it again and rewind us, it's fine, because that's what we wanted. We want these pláticas to happen in la mesa, whether you're having a cafecito or you're having a torta with horchata, it's fine. You just want to be able to have it. And I'm so thankful that it's growing. And I'm really hoping that the wishes that you guys had, next thing you know, it'll be, granted. So good job to you guys.
I'm definitely gonna do my part, and when I'm hanging out with the compadres, I'm gonna say, "Hey,
Yes,
so that's
Jaime.
all fear, guys. Or hey, Manny. So how about our babies?"
Yes, yes.
I think it'll definitely be interesting. The other day in speaking with Jeffrey said, Jeffrey called me a unicorn, and I took offense until I realized what he was saying. I think there's a lot of unicorns in the room, though. I think it's a very special thing that we take this much. How would I say it? That we're putting this much effort into what we're doing, into trying to support our community in this way. Definitely education. I know for me went a long way. You know, as I was sharing prior to our recording, you could definitely say I was very ignorant about kids prior to having my little girl, and the entire experience. And then being privy to the information kind of put it on my checklist, right? And then just being able to, again, to take it in, to be receptive, right? Say, hey, maybe I'm not right all the time, which again, that's questionable. But my point is more that I think you guys are doing really good work. I think this is awesome. I think I really enjoy. I guess I'm really excited about this project and what Service Area 7 is doing, how we're bringing it about the community, how we're all involved, and the even por decir, like some of the things that you mentioned for the wish list. um, we're already kind of in a sense with this promoting it, right? With the flyers, us connecting with the different partners, trying to strategize, trying to figure out the best way to bring this about to our community members. So for me, just thumbs up. If I had two other hands, you'd see them come up on the side like this. But
Yes.
great job, ladies. Great job, everybody. Definitely.
Yeah, I definitely echo everything that Jaime said. In just the many conversations, I appreciate like the validation, the empathy, not only as peers, as those who serve within their own community and as stakeholders, but it makes a difference, right? It really shifts the paradigm from something of stigma and shame to more so of like, hey, by shedding light, there's a face and it's somebody that you have cafecito with and you
Mm-hmm.
sit across from, and it's normalized. And even when even in this podcast, right, like in reflecting and thinking like, oh, it's a spectrum, like maternal mental health is a spectrum, from adjustment to looking at, medical trauma to even like postpartum and everything in between. It's really great to be able to look at each other, lean on each other in order to be able to support and improve it, right, for generations
Mm-hmm.
to come. So that way, your lived experience, when it happens to somebody else, it could look a little bit differently, and they'll have that natural support, but then they'll have this extended support system. So all good things, definitely a true privilege.
Yeah, you made a really valid point. One of the things is it's okay not to be okay. And that's the thing, the message that we want to get across to the many moms that show up, right? It takes courage to actually show up. So we
Mm-hmm.
always end our group with that. not only are we helping them, but we're helping, like you mentioned, Brigida, we're helping them change relationships with their loved ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
Creating that stronger bond with their baby. When a mom realizes, hey, maybe I need help, right? I'm not attaching that well with my child. And then all of a sudden they get the help that they needed. We normalize their emotions, what they're going through. That bonding is only going to get better between them and their baby. And that we're changing generation. Maybe there was trauma before them, right? Especially with the Latino community. Mental health is not something that's talked about. Now it's an opportunity for a mom to have a conversation with their mom, the baby's grandma. Like, what I'm going through is not me being lazy, is that I'm having depression. I'm having anxiety. That's why I don't want to leave the house, mom. So it's changing that. And I really, really love that we're helping out the community.
And to echo Danitza and Brida, I think in finding our space within that spectrum, wherever we are, and finding closure, I'm in that process of finding closure 2 years, post having my son, and coming to terms with, a lot of the guilt that I felt for not being able to have that connection with my son early on. And I'm saying, it's a new day. It's a new day to make, a connection and to grow our love, and to also find out who my true authentic self is now. I'm not that old Matilde anymore. I'm a new Matilde, and that's perfectly fine.
It's so true. Again, I, I, I'm just over here nodding my head because I identify with every single point you ladies are making it so eloquently. As I was sharing prior to the meeting, right? After my daughter was born, it changed my life, and uh, it's Manny's fault. Manny used to tell me, Jaime, when your kid is born, it's gonna change you completely. And like I said earlier, my priorities were completely different. I never imagined myself having a kid. And now that I have my little girl, I wouldn't change it for the world. There's nothing I wouldn't do for her. And it's the strongest magic that I've ever felt. Pero más mi punto is that to be able to provide this support to mothers and to the families that are going through this and expand on it, I think it's going to be an amazing thing. Well, I think it's amazing what you're already doing. Number one, that's why you're on the podcast, on the best podcast in the whole wide service area. Definitely. But I think kudos to all of you. Kudos to all of you. And just something too that I caught while the conversation was happening is that in a sense, we're all individuals with lived experience. Everybody in this room, in this space, is an individual with lived experience. We've all had situations that have changed our lives, right? But definitely, this is super cool. I'm just very excited again. And nobody's winding, nobody's telling me, Jaime, relax. Relájate, Jaime. Your job was to calm me down and tell me to relax. But great job, ladies. Great job. Really appreciate your presence.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I just want to say thank you to our experts here, our panelists. As much as this is a topic that I'm very passionate about and really want to make sure that we're bringing together the resources to support our community, really. Like, even right now, just having heard, whether you're talking from your clinical experience, your professional experience, administration, or personal, the biggest thing, like for me, I can tell you I took out of this is just that um, the experience that you are all seeing or have experienced yourselves in, and the example that you gave, Matilde, of your own story of taking something that happened to you that caused guilt, caused shame, but that you wouldn't change anything about it because you've now basically taken the power away from it and taken that power onto yourself, and that it's helped go from something that was a negative into something that you've turned it into a positive of strengthening your bond with your child, strengthening the relationship with your mom, and just creating that additional bond. That is a beautiful thing that again, as Jaime was saying, as a dad, it's not something that we necessarily experience or oftentimes see, but it's eye-opening, and I thank you all for sharing your story. Matilde, thank you for sharing your story as well, because I do think that it really touched my heart and kind of really made it real, if you will.
Agreed. Agreed. Anybody else want to share anything? I think I'm kind of speechless. I no, I'm getting a little teary-eyed, but no, this is like Manny said. I think it's a real touching conversation. At least for me, it's very personal. I really appreciate the great work you are all doing, and we're all doing, right, by relaying this conversation, having these conversations openly in this podcast. Our community is going to become more aware, in a sense, educated. So I really do appreciate it. If I could do a shameless plug, as I always do, I do want to remind everyone that we now have our Service Area 7 website, and you can go to our website and find a lot of these resources. We recently created, with the help of Rigida, Matilde, and everybody involved, a web page for our maternal mental health resources, which we plan to add more information on, more resources. You can find Brigida's email and mine on that webpage if you need to reach out for more information. And definitely just another reminder, if you're in need of support, definitely call the helpline, which is behind Manny. It's the 800-854-777 number.
7-1. Yeah.
71. Thank you. But definitely thank you all for being here. Any last words from our experts? Any suggestions? Any thoughts?
I do want to share that, sometimes, right, during when we have these conversations, right, there, I just want to remind that you don't have to have like that motherly glow, right, that people talk about sometimes to be a good mom. I think it's just important to remind us to give ourselves, a lot of compassion, a lot of pat on the back, just to remind ourselves that we're doing the best that we can. And just for any mothers that are listening, that remember that to your baby, you're it. You are all they know. So remember, it's okay to ask for help. It's like Denisa said, it's okay to not be okay. We want to help. We want to remind you that there is support. You do not have to do this alone. It does take a village to raise a child. So let us be like part of that village, right? So um there, I know that when I know you shared a resource. One of the resources that Denise and I um are familiar with is the Postpartum International Support Group, and hopefully that's something that we can go ahead and share maybe too, and moving forward and bring that awareness, because it's out there.
Well said.
Yeah. Just to add on to that, there's no perfect mom. There isn't. Social media is lying to you. Facebook is lying to you. Do not believe those images, those memes that you see. You're trying your best, and that's okay. Come join our group. It is something that we try to normalize, we try to support, we try to foster a community of moms so they feel supported and validated and heard. Thank you for having us.
Anytime.
So wait, everything that's on social media is not true? It's not real life? What?
Maybe on TikTok. That's it. No, just kidding.
Matilde, do you want to share any last words, being that you are our newest host to our podcast? Thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. I'm just very grateful to be part of this group. I realized when I first started sharing my story about maternal mental health and my experience with postpartum depression, I realized that this is kind of my closure, like my closure village, so to speak, from that. And I want to be part of, like Cindy mentioned, being part of that village that helps out mothers, that helps out, families during this process, because it even opened my eyes. I was so busy with my own experience that I neglected my partner's experience. I neglected my family's experience through what I was going. And I'm more mindful of that, and I'm very excited to be a part of this group. Thank you.
We're glad to have you. We're definitely glad to
Absolutely.
have you. You're an awesome individual.
Yay!
And I know Manny said it, but thank you so much for sharing. I know how much courage that takes from somebody. Um, Brigida, Erika, would you like to share any last words?
Thanks for having me on. I always end up with an empty cup of coffee and lots of good takeaways. So thanks again for having me.
Anytime.
No, thank you. I think it's been nothing but an honor, and thank you once again for sharing your story, Matilda. And I'm so glad that people are gonna listen to this podcast, and we're gonna get to more families, and eventually we'll be able to get more referrals or why not that we can support, and so no one feels alone. I think that's the biggest thing, even like overall looking at mental health, but with maternal health for like mothers to not feel that like you mentioned, Anita, it's not like what is shown on Facebook or the novelas or, whatever they tell you that, oh, you could just go like that. And then next thing you know, you have the glow or why not? It's okay to not be okay. I'll take that with me. And like you said, Bridget, yes, our coffee cups are empty, but we're ready to fill them up for the next podcast. So thank you once again.
Thank you. Manny, anything you'd like to share?
I just again, like I shared, thank you for everything, all your expertise, both professional and personal. And I just know that you're doing amazing work out there and really educating the community, and that we're here to support as much as we possibly can.
Thank you so much. And with that, thank you, Manny, Erika, Brigida, Matilde, Danitza, and Cindy for being here. I really enjoyed this podcast. I've enjoyed them all, but this is really awesome. I really love this conversation. I do want to remind our audience to please visit our website. We have a lot of resources we've all worked very hard on. We have meetings that are open to our community, like our peer leadership team meeting, which we would like to invite you all to, or our SALT meeting, which happens every second Friday of the month. But definitely go to our website, take a look, remember to come back, listen to our new podcast. We're going to be always innovating, creating
Mhm.
new resources, finding more support for everyone in the community. With that said, thank you all for joining us from Service Area 7 Administration. I am Jaime, saying goodbye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Hasta la otra.